It was a Friday, like any other Friday, or so I thought. The last bell of the day had rung, echoing through the hallway as I raced out of school. My prized marble bag swung from my hand, promising an afternoon of fun. I burst into my room, eager to challenge my friend Michael to a duel at our makeshift marble kingdom under the old oak tree in my backyard. But as I reached under my bed for the familiar worn cardboard box, my fingers brushed against something cold and still. I pulled my hand back with a gasp, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. It felt like ice, that strange, unyielding thing under my bed. Curiosity mixed with a prickle of fear made me reach out again. This time I used my flashlight. The beam of light flickered across a pale, bony hand. It lay limp, partially hidden under the bed, attached to an arm that disappeared into the shadows. Terror, raw and consuming, seized me. My scream got stuck in my throat, turning into a strangled gasp. The marble bag slipped from my grasp, the colorful glass balls scattering across the floor like confetti from a nightmare. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet as I scrambled away from the monstrous secret hidden beneath my bed. I don't remember running. One moment I was staring at the hand, frozen in fear, and the next I was gasping for breath in the living room. My mom was humming along to the radio, a dishcloth in her hand, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Mom!" I choked out, my voice a trembling whisper. She turned, her expression softening as she saw me. "Honey, what is it? You scared me. Under my bed?" I stammered, my words tumbling over each other. "There's someone there." Mom's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "What do you mean someone's under your bed? Did you leave your toys out again?" "No, Mom, a hand!" I cried, tears welling up in my eyes. "I saw a hand." She knelt before me, her eyes searching mine. "Are you feeling all right, sweetie? Did you have a bad dream?" Her disbelief stung more than the fear gnawing at my insides. I knew what I saw. I knew there was someone hidden beneath my bed. But how do you explain the unexplainable, especially when no one believes you? That night's sleep was a distant dream. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of leaves against my window sent shivers down my spine. The image of the pale, lifeless hand was seared into my mind, a horrifying loop playing on repeat behind my eyelids. I imagined the rest of the body, hidden in the shadows, and a silent scream built in my chest. I tried to tell myself it was a nightmare, that I had imagined the whole thing, but deep down, I knew better. The coldness of the hand, the stillness of it, the way it just lay there in the darkness. It was all too real. My parents finally came to check on me, their faces etched with worry. "Honey, you haven't slept a wink," Mom said, her voice soft and soothing. "Are you sure you're feeling okay?" I wanted to tell them. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops until they believed me. But the words wouldn't come out. How do you explain the unexplainable, especially when it terrifies you to your core? The next morning I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. The fear was still there, a knot of dread in the pit of my stomach. I avoided my room as much as I could, opting to eat my breakfast on the floor in the living room, my back pressed against the sofa, seeking comfort in its familiarity. My parents exchanged worried glances but didn't push. Their silence, their attempts to treat me like I was fragile, made the fear even worse. It was like they didn't believe me, like they thought I was making it all up. I spent the day in a daze, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. The laughter of children playing outside sounded distant, their joy a painful reminder of the fear that had taken root in my heart. I was trapped alone in my terror with no one to turn to. Section 5. Night Terrors and Dusty Bones. The nightmare started that night. Vivid, horrifying dreams of skeletal figures reaching out from the shadows, their bony fingers scraping against my skin. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The scent of decay, faint but unmistakable, lingered in the air, clinging to my senses even after I turned on the lights. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to tell someone who would believe me. The next day, I confided in Michael, my voice barely a whisper as I recounted the events of that dreadful Friday afternoon. His eyes widened as I spoke, his expression a mixture of fear and morbid fascination. "You're not kidding, are you?" he breathed, his voice barely audible. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "I swear, Michael, there's something under my bed, something dead." Section 6. A Friend's Ear, a Glimmer of Hope. To my surprise, Michael didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss my fears as childish imagination. Instead, he listened with a seriousness that surprised me. When I was finished, he leaned closer, his eyes bright with a strange mix of fear and excitement. "We need to find out what's down there," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We need to know who it is." His words sent a chill down my spine. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him to forget it, that we should just leave it alone. But a bigger part of me, the part that was tired of being afraid, the part that needed answers, agreed. That night, armed with nothing but a flashlight and our pounding hearts, we crept into my room. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of dust and something else, something cold and metallic. My hand trembled as I reached for the light switch, bathing the room in a pale yellowish glow. Section 7. The Library of Lost Souls. Michael, ever the pragmatist, suggested we start our investigation at the library. "If we're dealing with a ghost," he declared, his brow furrowed in concentration, "we need to know who it is, why it's haunting your bed." The library, with its hushed whispers and the scent of aging paper, felt like stepping into another world. We spent hours poring over dusty local history books, our eyes scanning faded newspaper clippings and old photographs. We were looking for any mention of disappearances, any unsolved mysteries that might be linked to our ghostly houseguest. It was Michael who stumbled upon the article, tucked away in the back pages of a crumbling newspaper from the 1950s. It told the story of a young boy, no older than 10, who had vanished from his home, never to be seen again. The boy's name was Thomas, and he had lived in our house. As I read the article, a cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. The description of Thomas, a freckled boy with a mop of brown hair, sent shivers down my spine. It was like looking into a mirror, a distorted reflection of my own childhood. The article went on to describe the circumstances of Thomas's disappearance. He had been playing in his room one minute, and the next, he was gone. His parents, distraught and desperate, searched everywhere, but the boy was never found. The case, the article concluded, remained unsolved. The more we learned about Thomas, the more convinced I became that he was the one under my bed. The thought sent shivers down my spine, but it also sparked a strange sense of responsibility. I had to help him. I had to find out what happened to him. The truth, as it often does, came out during a storm. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows like skeletal fingers, mirroring the turmoil brewing inside our home. My father, his face pale and drawn, had been drinking heavily that night, the smell of whiskey acrid in the close air. "It's your fault!" he roared, his words slurred, his eyes bloodshot. "It's all your fault!" My mother, her face etched with fear, tried to calm him down, but it was no use. He was like a wild animal, trapped and dangerous. I cowered in the corner, my heart pounding in my chest. His words, laced with drunken anger, meant nothing to me, yet they held a terrifying power. It was then, in that moment of fear and confusion, that I realized the truth. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me, was the monster under my bed all along. The storm raged on, mirroring the tempest of emotions swirling inside me. As my father's drunken ramblings continued, the pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place. His rage, his guilt, his desperate attempts to silence me, it all pointed to a horrifying truth. With a trembling voice I confronted him. "It was you, wasn't it?" I whispered, the words barely audible above the roar of the wind. "You hurt Thomas, you hid him under my bed." The color drained from my father's face. His eyes widened in horror, his drunken bravado crumbling like a house of cards. He opened his mouth to speak, to deny, but the words wouldn't come. He had been caught, his carefully constructed facade shattered. The police came that night, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness like beacons of hope. My father's confession, when it came, was a jumbled mess of fear and remorse. He had been a young man then, consumed by jealousy and rage. He hadn't meant to kill Thomas, he claimed, but the truth was there, buried in the shallow grave under my bed. The discovery of Thomas's remains sent shockwaves through our small town. The mystery that had haunted our house for decades was finally solved, but the cost was immeasurable. My family, once a picture of normalcy, was irrevocably broken. Years have passed and the pain has dulled, but the memory of that summer, the summer I met the ghost under my bed, remains vivid. I still think about Thomas, the boy who never got to grow old, the boy whose laughter was silenced too soon. I visit his grave often, leaving a small toy or a wildflower as a token of remembrance. He may be gone, but he will never be forgotten. And in a strange way, his memory brings me a sense of peace, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the truth will always come to light.